a Yankee Doodle do or die. I realize that you're my Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July.
The Johnny Rocket Launchpad. And now, here's Johnny.
Hey, it's Johnny Rocket here at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, always launching ideas in your direction, the Northwest only rock and roll Libertarian radio show. Here with my co-host, Mr. Kurt Nelson.
But down.
My voice of reason, the beautiful, sexy, talented, and professional Heather Nixon.
Hello. Well, I don't know how professional for long. Those layout notices got mailed out today.
Okay, we'll talk about this on our fourth segment.
All right.
Anyways, we're talking to Steve Kerbel. He's a 2016 presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. We have a special deal from Steve. His manager himself said the first 100 people who donate $100 or more get an autographed copy of his book for free.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah, you can check that out at SteveKerbel2016.com here at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad.
Right on, man.
So is there like a promotion code? I think your manager, when I was talking to earlier, he said that, is there a promotion thing you can put in there or on the donate?
We could probably add it in there. It's not there now, but right now it's this. But you got my verbal agreement.
Okay, cool.
So maybe by the time the show airs.
Yeah. So
Okay.
very cool, very cool. And like I said, okay, I'll spell it out. S, Sierra, Tango, Echo, Victor.
Don't do that. That's
Johnny,
confusing.
Johnny,
No,
come on,
that's
man.
confusing. I yell at him all the time for
Kerbel,
that.
Kerbel 2016.com. So you can check it out. Make sure you donate $100 or more. And please donate. If you don't have $100, donate 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks, $100, whatever, 50 bucks, whatever you can do to
55.
help. If you like what he's saying, he has some good shit he's saying. I agree with him. And also check out his Road to Reform page, which talks about all the shit that's fucked up and how he's going to fix it.
Right.
And I think it's valid.
Well
I mean,
put. Well put.
yeah, it's fucked up. So this is how we're going to fix this shit. His examples are right on. What we do here on the third segment, we do a segment called Rocket Fire. And what we do here at Rocket Fire is we're going to ask you a series of 10 questions. These questions are politically related. If you can answer these questions, Steve, within 30 to 60 seconds would be much appreciated. Are you ready to play?
I'm hoping they're yes or no questions.
They're not. They're not. No. No. You ready to play Rocket Fire? Bam! Rocket Fire.
Question 1.
Do you think most Americans view the government as us versus them?
Yes, they do.
Can you expand on that?
In 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, they do because they just don't feel like they've contributed anymore. They think that the government's not us, and when they take money from the government, they're not taking it from us, and they think that they're subservient to the government instead of just having the control over the government that they should via the Constitution.
Right on.
Question 2.
What would you do regarding eminent domain, civil asset forfeiture, and government limits on profits?
They would go away completely. And actually, one of the things I just put in my blog recently was that I'm proposing that any government agency that assesses fines cannot receive that fine. And if they do that, then maybe the extra enforcement goes away. And if there is any fine money, it goes to a legitimate charity.
Right on.
Question 3.
Does the government do a good job at managing pollution?
No.
Okay.
That's just silly, Johnny.
Yeah, they suck.
There you go.
All right.
Question 4.
What is the main function of government?
It's supposed to be to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare, to adjudicate disputes and protect our liberties. Unfortunately, it does the complete opposite of all of that.
Right.
Does that mean that everyone generally should be on welfare?
No. No, there's a difference between promoting the general welfare and paying a bunch of people.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Question 5.
Why is the free market run the economy better than a mixed economy?
Well, because the free market balances what's necessary. If there's a need, the need is filled. If there's no need, then it doesn't need to be pushed through. And so the free market is going to dictate a much more balanced and appropriate result.
Right on.
Question 6.
Is self-defense the only legitimate use of force?
It is. Yes, it is.
Well, like we'd like to keep it at around 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, no, self-defense is the only legitimate use of force, because other than that, you're taking from other people and you're infringing on their liberties. And if you have the ability to defend yourself, you should be able to do that.
Do you think our copyright laws and patents are overreaching?
I don't know.
I do not know. I plead the fifth.
Yeah, no, I haven't thought that one through. It's hard to do that in 30 seconds.
Okay.
But I would say if you're saying that overreaching, Not really. I think that, I mean, in the principle, I think that if you create something and you have the right to have the benefit of what you've created, I think you should be able to protect that.
Question 8.
What are some reasons why Obamacare is a bad idea?
Takes away choices, makes the government more powerful. It basically, it doesn't address any of the reasons why healthcare is so expensive. It just makes it mandated and takes away people's right to choose, and from the medical industry's right to do what they believe is right based on actual medical treatment rather than whatever the government tells them to do.
Question 9.
If we don't eventually elect a liberty candidate, what will happen?
We'll end up with no liberty.
Question 10.
What's your opinion on Edward Snowden? Some people
think-
say he's a criminal, others will say a hero. What is your opinion?
He is a hero. It's very interesting when people talk about that. People don't see him in any other way as a traitor or a hero. I go towards hero.
Rocket fire! Yeah!
Well done.
Good job, Steve Kerbel! Good job, man.
Thank you.
You're going to hear some explosions and shit right now. An explosion. Anyways, should government be involved with people's marriages at all? And what alternatives should people have?
I think that an adult that has the liberty of consent and to make their own choices should be able to choose any way they live their life as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, which is our basic mantra.
Mhm.
But I also think that the government has nothing to do with the actual decisions and regulation of marriage. I mean, you might, if there's a purpose for whatever reasons that may exist for government, like taxation or keeping records for whatever purpose that may help people in living their lives, that's fine. But the fact is, the government should not be saying you can't live your life the way you want to because it doesn't fit within my morals.
You as president, what would you do to our education system?
I would localize it to general areas rather than trying to like Common Core, which is crazy.
I agree.
Things like No Child Left Behind that just basically left everyone behind.
Oh my God.
And I think that really it's the way to do it is each area has various dialects, colloquialisms, ways that people communicate. And if you try and make everyone on the same playing field to understand, if you're in Alabama and you're trying to speak like somebody in California, it's a completely different dialect.
Right.
And so you can't expect them to be held to the exact same federally mandated standards because they're two different regions of the country with two different ways of communicating, if nothing else. So now I think you got to leave it to the states and the cities and the parents.
Mhm.
People tend to leave out the parents because they believe government, but I really think the parent should be the biggest contributor in where their child's education goes.
I agree. What about private education?
I think that should be able to be done the way a parent agrees. If a school has a certain curriculum and the parent believes that that curriculum is good for their kids and they believe it makes a proper education, it should be up to them and the government should have nothing to do with it.
Okay. If an individual commits a crime against someone, he or she is usually required to pay money or his or her time to the state. Why don't they be required to pay restitution to the individual?
They should.
I agree. They should.
Because, it's like I was talking about before. I think that regulation and law enforcement, there's too much of a selfish type profit motive in that. I mean, I don't know how many cities you've been to that have this heavy duty speeding enforcement. And I'm not saying that people should be able to drive 100 miles an hour through a speed zone, but if you're going 57 and a 55, you really didn't hurt anybody. And what you find is that the city councils will usually require that they can reduce the points, but they don't reduce the fine, which says it's all about the cash.
Right.
And so basically what they need to do is change it so that the people who levy that fine cannot receive the money. And I think that if someone is harmed in this particular case, absolutely, if there's money to be paid, it should go to the person that got hurt, not the government.
Mm-hmm. Right on. It's like the same thing with click it or ticket laws. I don't like it. Or helmet laws. I mean, it's in the best interest that you put on a helmet. Sure. I agree. I think that's smart.
Well, yeah, and under our circumstances, I think the only argument people could make for helmets and seatbelts is that if they get hurt and we got to pay to fix them, then, that's where that comes from. But I think that, if everything's elective, if people can choose what they want and they don't want to wear a seatbelt, they don't want to wear a helmet, it's their choice. But the other thing, too, is people tend to also forget that it's not the government that has to tell us to do this stuff. If you've got kids, you're going to say, are you a moron? How come you're not wearing your helmet?
Right.
That's the kind of thing.
It's kind of the community.
Right, it's their community.
I agree.
And that's the way people can learn what's right and wrong. But it's the same thing. Like I think that people another thing where everybody wants to ban things.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about this later, but the Confederate flag.
Well, yeah. Well, and I just heard that there was a city somewhere where these activists decide they want to ban the sales of cigarettes. Okay, come on.
Wow.
Remember the
luck.
large soda in New York City?
Right.
I mean, enough already. People are adults. Give them information about how their choices can affect them and let them make their choices themselves.
Right.
And
if
this
you
is
don't
the
like
way-
something, don't buy it.
Exactly. Prohibition has never, ever worked.
Right.
And so, but yet we keep trying it over and over, and the results are the same.
It just says that people are too stupid to make their own decisions, and that the government has to make them for them.
That's exactly what it says.
Well,
Exactly.
what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that
Exactly.
is what the government has been doing with prohibition since the 1920s.
Well, yeah, and I ask people, it's a common conversation. Has anyone ever not gotten drugs because of the war on drugs?
No.
Yeah, probably not.
No.
Exactly.
They have. Just made it more expensive, so they had to rob 7-Eleven to get the money for it.
Right.
And it threw a lot of people in jail that never hurt anybody.
Exactly.
But it never stopped anyone from getting drugs. It built a huge organized crime, underworld, and it didn't help at all. And it was a terrible, terrible result. And it didn't achieve the goal they were trying to achieve. And no prohibition ever does.
How would you handle government regulations and bureaucracies that establish these bullshit codes and laws?
Well, I think depending on the industry, right now it's political, and that's where
Yeah,
the system
absolutely.
So if there's an industry like banking or finance or insurance or anything like that, it's okay that there's a way for people who feel like they don't know what happened or they need help to get help, and that can either be via an industry group, where they put people with good experience on how to help people solve these problems. But the problem is right now it's through government regulation, and it's not even friendly government regulation. It's adversarial government regulation. And this doesn't help the consumer either. And so what happens is we've got to take the politics out of regulation first, and then we've got to move towards a lot more reasonable and even-handed regulation. And then we also have to repair a lot of these laws that are just broken beyond all belief.
Right on. I agree. Okay. Well, we kind of talked about this before, but what is your stance on Rand Paul?
He's refreshing and disappointing all at the same time.
Okay. I'd like to hear what you have to say about him.
It's cool because he has some libertarian bent in some of the things he's talking about. I thought that it was cool that he filibustered the renewal of the Patriot Act. But the problem is he's a Republican, which means he needs to gain his support from the Republican people who kick in the money. And I think my biggest problem, what I see from a lot of the Republican agenda, is that it violates the First Amendment. The First Amendment clearly states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise
Sure.
thereof.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is they're always proposing, well, no gay marriage, no this, no that, because my religion doesn't like it. It's like, well, did any of you read the First Amendment?
Right.
Right.
Why is it that you're, and the thing is, I really believe that if people were to go to even the most hardened right-wing people and just say, look, do you want to live your life the way you want to? If you believe in religion A, you think people who believe in religion B or no religion at all should have to live by what you've been taught? Why is it?
Majority of them understand.
They do.
And this is the weird thing. I think libertarianism is very similar in certain ways to conservatives in the sense that I think a lot of conservatives understand why libertarians are the way they are.
Yes, I think you're right.
I do. I think they get it, but they still have that little thing in their head, that little nugget of information that they want to impose on people.
They do.
Either it's religion or normally it's religion. Fine, whatever, but that's fine. But doesn't mean you have to ban everything that the other guy wants to do.
Well, right, because this is what scares me. Where I think about the evolution of our thought in our country is so many people have forgotten the reason why we exist. We exist because the Church of England made all the rules. And so when the founding fathers got together and they wrote the Constitution, they included the fact that they can't legislate religion because they came through an environment where religion was legislated. And so, but now a lot of people I hear people arguing saying, there is no separation of church and state in the Constitution. And the truth is those particular words are not there. But if you look at Thomas Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptist Association in 1802, he says that First Amendment regarding religion creates a wall of separation between church and state. And so
Yes.
that was the intention behind it. But there are a lot of people out there who I think really want to legislate their religion on everybody else.
I agree.
And so they're trying to say that there is no separation of church and state called for in the First Amendment. And that is scary to me, because I think the main reason you learn history is so you don't repeat the same mistakes.
Absolutely, man. It's common sense stuff.
I think so.
You and I have discussed this offline, and I think this is like a touchy subject, especially with libertarians.
Under a libertarian utopia.
Libertarian utopia. You know, when can we get involved in international affairs?
Well, in a libertarian utopia, I think that's an arguable term, because my view is...
let's just go back to the Constitution. How about that? How about that?
All
That's
right.
a good idea.
Yeah, that's a nice place to go back to. Okay, so I think that, we need to defend ourselves. We need to build an infrastructure to do that. But all we're doing right now by butting into everybody else's business is just basically pissing them off and making enemies.
Right.
And so I think there's a good way of dealing with the rest of the world, and I think it's through smart diplomacy. And I think that if we're out there and we're talking in understanding the needs and the history of the person we're talking to, the country we're talking to try and make peace, to say, look, we just want to be friends, and anything we can do to help, that's great. Of course, some people you can believe, some people you can't, but I still think that you can be respectful. I think this whole thing about not talking to people is stupid, because
Right.
they say smart people I know say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So
That's
saying,
true.
well, I will not dignify you with a conversation is stupid.
Right.
But I think that really it's a matter of diplomacy. I think it's a matter of good, meaningful discussions with the rest of the world. I don't think we need to have troops in, however many countries we got troops in. I think that they don't pose a threat to America. And I do believe that the actual presence of troops in some places actually denigrate the goodwill that we have with a lot of people. Yeah, so I think that really, we do need to defend ourselves, but let's do it where it's actually a defense, and not trying to police the world.
I always tell people, like, the Department of Defense isn't really about defense. It's the Department of War.
Yeah.
And Department of Homeland Security is supposedly now the Department of Defense in its function.
Yeah,
okay.
I think you're right.
I don't know. I'm just saying there's going to be another fucking bureaucracy. There's going to be another. They're not going to be happy with the Department of Homeland Security, so they're going to create another program. The Department of Politically Correct Societies. And that's what's going to be the next one.
Can you imagine walking in there?
Oh, yeah. But what's going to happen. The Politically Correct Society. Oh, you said that? That's a $50 carbon credit for you, Mr.
I feel
Rocket.
like that was rude.
Yeah, exactly.
So there'll probably be a listing in the front, in the reception area, saying you may not use these words or references.
Yes.
There's various penalties, like riding your skateboard on the street.
Right. Totally.
And so that's what it would end up with. Additional bureaucracy is always bad. I think obviously we do not live in a world that I consider to be terribly safe, but I think we make it more dangerous by trying to push each other around. And I think we need to defend ourselves, be prepared to actually defend ourselves. But I think diplomacy is very important, but it has to be done right.
So what approach to libertarianism do you differ from, like, Gary Johnson or Ron Paul? And why do you think maybe your ideas could be more beneficial?
Well, I know that compared to Gary Johnson, I'm probably a little bit more of a purist. He was a Republican before he changed over to get the nomination in 2012. And so, he's a very libertarian Republican as well. I mean, he's done a lot of really good things. But I think that one of the ways that we differ has to do with the private prisons.
Okay.
I think that he believes that private prisons are the way to go because they're something like 53 or 56 cents on the dollar to run them. And so, but I think that because the basis of my entire libertarian views is about personal liberty, that these existence of these private prisons promotes more people going to them via
the free market in the reverse.
Well, how many judges have you heard that have been sanctioned for getting money from private prisons and sending people to the private prison? It's happened. Yep. It's happened. And so, I'm all about saving money, but I'm about liberty first.
Right.
And so, to me, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to throw a bunch of innocent people in jail because it saves money on the jails.
Yeah, but see, jails, in my opinion, too, are kind of a legitimate function of government.
Yeah, it is. It is one of the things that the government should be managing. But, and like I say, I'm all about saving money, but I think that my priority is always going to fall back to personal liberty.
Me too, man.
So that's probably the biggest difference between my view and Gary Johnson's view. Ron Paul, I mean, he's a definite pioneer. He's thought a lot of things through. He's thought things very clearly, and my hat's off to him. Great man. But I think that, of the people that I'm actually up against, I think that my views are probably more purist libertarian than anybody else. I think that...
I noticed that because you sound a lot like me. A little bit of government, it's okay. And I think
it's a necessary evil.
It is a necessary evil.
But the problem is that it's gone wild, just like everything else people do.
Yeah.
And so I think we got to get that in check. We need to remember that what is the goal of what this country was about. And right now, government's out of control. And in my view, more government means less freedom.
Talk to us about your website. And again, go ahead and plug your book, man.
Cool. Okay. Well, the book, it was something that just came to me, and it's written almost as a 12-step program, but it's not a 12-step program.
I think it's great.
Nice. It's something where, I think that a lot of people they know something's wrong. Almost all of them smell a rat, but they don't know where it's coming from because they've been catching so much propaganda from both major parties, and they've taken one side or the other, so they're right and everybody else is wrong, and don't tell me anything else because it'll let the enemies in, and they're bad and they hate America.
Right, exactly.
And so I just thought, if I could get something out there that had a little bit of suspense, a little bit of mystery, and a lot of good, hard examples, and some very valuable quotes as well, and people recognizing where the problem really comes from and how it can be fixed, that was my motivation in writing the book. I thought, it's a short read. You can probably get through it in an hour and a half, and when you're done, you're most people are like, oh,
right, totally.
And so I'm actually quite proud of it, but as far as the website goes, one of the ways I wanted to differentiate myself from the other candidates and the other candidates we've had historically is to address one way that I think we have not had enough real attention from other voters, and that's the fact that our platform's great. It's been developed over decades. I look at it and I'm in awe about what a brilliant work our platform is. But how is it that we can explain that to someone who's a diehard Republican or Democrat? Okay, first of all, you start saying something that they're going to feel is totally extreme, and they're going to say, "Oh, you're just a nut," and then they move on. But they don't really get to know what we stand for. So what I thought we need to do is we need to show the incremental changes necessary to get to the implementation of our platform. This is something I believe no one else has done. And so I for example of this, I built a page on the website, stevekerbel2016.com. The page is called Road to Reform. And that is an example with a number of very, very hot issues and explaining, where do we want to go, but what's the first thing we do to get there? And so, it's because our reforms are dramatic. They're not going to happen overnight, unless one of us becomes king. And then guess what? Then libertarianism doesn't work anyway because one of us is king.
Right. Exactly.
And so you have to have a process, and you have to make that first step something that people can really envision as what's a good thing. It's something that benefits the most people, something they can really get their head around, and that they can understand that, okay, this is a reasonable step. And then when they see that first step and they see the ultimate goal, then they're not as put off by the ultimate goal because they can see where are we going and why are we doing it, and it just doesn't look like some crazy extremist. Because I believe our platform is something that most Americans, when they got their head around it, would embrace it for the most part. And I think the problem is that they've been well protected against it by the stances of the left and the right. And I think that what I'm trying to do is to appeal to the mainstream Americans by showing them step by step, where I think we need to start, where we need to end up. And I think that's going to make our platform far more understandable to the average American than it is today.
Bam! Steve Kerbel! Woo! Check out his website, stevekerbel2016.com at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad. We're going to put a link up for your page on our site. Check us out at the JohnnyRocketLaunchpad.com, the hub for everything libertarian. We have my co-host, Mr. Kurt Nelson.
Bam! What am I supposed to read this time?
Oh, my God. My co-host, Mr. Kurt Nelson.
What am I supposed to read this time?
Nothing.
Oh.
And my voice of reason, the beautiful Heather Nixon.
I just don't know what to say right now.
And you can always check us out at the InfoSub Fridays and Saturdays, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at Facebook.com/JR Launchpad. Twitter at JRLaunch, and jrlp.podbean.com. And always check us out on iTunes, and make sure you donate to Life Spring Ministries. 100% of your money will go to the children of Africa, lifespringafrica.com. This is Johnny Rocket. We just had Steve Kerbel, 2016 presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. Rock and roll. We're going to be right back, and we're going to wrap this shit up, and we have Band of the Week, so stick around.